All right, so morning all. Apologize for being a little bit late with getting this going, putting this board together, and then um, there are certain topics I'm trying to broach in these videos and trying to do it in such a manner that is middle of the road, and it gets kind of tricky. And then this morning I had the almost out of body experience of talking to Ryan Walter on the phone, just a normal, regular, everyday conversation with Ryan Walter, a guy that I watched when I was a kid playing, watching hockey. He's playing for Montreal and Vancouver and Washington before that. It's just that was a strange experience, and it was nice though. And yes, I did say to him, I said, so at some point when we're done all the lockdown stuff, you wouldn't mind coming on and doing an interview, right? And he said, no, that'd be great. So may hold him to that. Yeah, so that was actually kind of fun, and he's doing well, and his family's doing well in amidst all this, and my family's still healthy throughout all this. So, we're those of us who can stay home are, and I think that helps. But that being said, not everybody has that luxury, and it definitely is a luxury. Now, Matthias Brome, and I'm pronouncing that the way that the Elite Prospects website tells me to pronounce it. He signed a 1 year deal with Detroit, 43 points in 52 games. So it's a free agent pickup, and since it's Steve Yzerman, I have some faith in it. I do. He's been pretty smart in the small moves he's already made with Detroit. He's been pretty smart in terms of who he's added and what he's been willing to give up in order to add those players. So you look at Fabry's a good example of, I think, a high value pickup without giving up a lot in return, where he's done well. And I think Detroit's going to show improvement next year. And he's talked about wanting Detroit to be more competitive next year. He's not just about getting draft picks. No, we'll be bad again next year. He knows things are going to be challenging next year, but he wants to make sure that they're taking steps in the right direction. He wants more wins, less losses next season. Gaetan Haas has signed a 1 year, $910,000 extension with the Oilers. This was rumored to be on the way, and of course, there are other names that apparently are being tied to both teams in Alberta in terms of the European signings, and we'll see them over the next few days. You got to think as we get into May. Haas has been a very good depth forward for Edmonton. He's been useful in various roles, and I'm glad to see that they've decided to keep him around. Oscar Lindblom of the Philadelphia Flyers, who's a restricted free agent this summer. He is set to finish his cancer treatment, so he's doing his final round, and I think that's awesome news. So this is great news for Flyers fans, hockey fans in general. We all rallied around Lindblom when this happened, and I'm glad to see some good news. And there is some good news out there, trust me. There is two. There is two good news that's going on out there. Now, if you're a Canuck fan looking for good news might equal Nikita Trampkin signing a contract. If you're a Canuck fan looking for good news, you might think it doesn't include the Canucks signing Nikita Trampkin and bringing him back. Now, he has interest in coming back. The Canucks have interest in bringing him back, and Jim Benning has said he does see a role in the top six for Nikita Trampkin. You have to think as a number 5 or 6 defenseman, not top 4. And when he left the NHL 3 years ago, I had envisioned maybe he'd end up being a top 4, but in the KHL, it doesn't look like he's taken that next step to where he projects as a top 4 in the NHL. Now, what's interesting to me in this is Jim Benning's reasoning behind not signing him yet. He wants to know what the finances are going to be for next year. So while we're seeing some teams signing guys, St. Louis comes to mind as a team that's gone, nope, we're going to keep signing as if the cap's going to stay the same. Benning's going, I want to know what next year's cap's going to be before I decide on who's going to make what. And there are definitely GMs that seem to be doing that, where they're saying, okay, we want to know what the numbers are going to be, and then we can figure out next year's numbers for our team. And so Trampkin may very well end up signing with the Canucks, but it doesn't sound like it's going to happen until they know exactly what the cap's going to be and exactly what finances for next year are going to be, and that's where things get tricky. I wanted to mention in this video, Bar Down on their Instagram, Bar Down Hockey. They have Stay the Puck home shirts that are raising money for the homeless. T-shirts and hoodies. T-shirts are $25 each. The hoodies are $50 each, and all of the money raised from this goes to charity. That's why I'm mentioning it here. I've made an order myself for myself and for my wife. I think Stay the Puck home. I think that's a fun word play there. And I've looking at their Instagram, I thought, yeah, I can chip in. And apparently they've raised a good chunk of money already, and they've been quite impressed with the outreach from people. And if you don't want to get a T-shirt and you want to give money to the homeless, they have a link on their site as well where you can just donate to the homeless. If you're like, I wouldn't mind getting a tax break on that, then you just do the donation, and then you can get credit on your taxes. I went with the shirt route because I went with the shirt route. But anyways, yeah, the money goes to a good cause because while we're all going through this, we know food banks are going through a real uptick in their demand at a time of year when they're probably not getting a lot of donations either. And so making sure those food banks have something there to meet that demand, and the fact that the homeless, who are already relying on those food banks in all likelihood, that they're taken care of as well. I just think it's a really good cause right now because it's easy to have all of that lost in the shuffle. There's a lot of stuff going on. Anyways, now speaking of the cap and the idea of a flat cap. So let's just say the NHL says, all right, we're going to eat the losses and we're just going to leave the cap flat. And, if they leave it flat for this year, you have to think it'll be flat next year and the year after as well. What we're going through right now is going to have ramifications for the economy for years. What I'm wondering is, will ticket sales also reflect that? So what makes me mad at the NHL, and traditionally it has for years, is that whenever we have a lockout, we have players going, hey, the league's trying to screw us over, and the league goes, hey, fans, we're thinking about you. We want to make sure that you guys aren't getting hosed because these players want, $80-90 million salaries, and if we have to charge you guys more money for tickets if we're going to pay them that. So, we can't afford a $90 million salary for one team and 40 for another. It's not fair. It's not fair to the fans either because those fans are going to pay so much money. And then they get their salary cap, and where are we at 15 years later? We're up around the ridiculous numbers that 15 years ago teams were going, well, we can't pay that. The way they paid it, our prices for merchandise, tickets, and everything else went through the roof. So it's felt for years like we just keep paying more so that they can make more, and that if they're not going to be making more, then our tickets shouldn't go up either. But if they're going to play in front of no fans for a while, and then you're going to see fans come back at some point, or if there's a limited number of fans allowed in the stadiums, then how's that going to work? So do you have to pay, if I'm going to, let's say the Canucks say, okay, we can allow 1,000 people, and I go, all right, I'm going to get a ticket. I have to pay like $1,000 for that ticket? And I would understand if the answer's yes on some level, and yet, does that then tell the NHL, hey, we could charge this amount of money for tickets? This is great. So I do worry about ticket prices in the midst of all this and how much they're going to expect fans to make up for the shortfall. And escrow. Escrow's the thing that we all forget. If that cap stays flat, remember, the NHL and the players are supposed to be 50-50 on salaries. So if that cap's going to stay the same, but you see the revenues drop by 30-35%, and if the NHL and the players know it's going to drop 30-35%, are the owners willing to say, for this year, players get 75% of league revenues and we'll just take 25%? If you're an owner of a team in Florida or Arizona and you're already losing tons of money, are you willing to sign off on that? Are you okay with saying, yeah, no, we'll let the players have I'll take way, way less and I'll lose 60 or 70 million dollars in a season? Like, again, there's a lot for the NHL to go through. So this is why when people say, well, it'll just stay the same. It might, but there's a lot to be discussed. I still think that you can leave maybe the cap in a similar, but you'd have to adjust down, I would think. I don't know, we'll see. Now, as I was putting this board together, the Pittsburgh Penguins announced they have signed Radim Zohorna to a contract, a 1-year, two-way deal. And as soon as I saw he was a forward, my first thought was, so he's going to be on the wing for Sid then. Got it. Because it seems like your no-name wingers always end up playing with Sidney Crosby at some point, and it's almost as if management has some kind of betting going on up in the owner's box. Like, all right, this year we've got this guy who he was a janitor last week, and we just taught him to skate. We're going to see if Sid can get him 10 goals this year. Who wants a part of that action? Oh, Sid can easily get a janitor 10 goals. It just sometimes feels like with the Penguins, this is what's happened. This is why when people compare Crosby's numbers to Ovechkin's, I'm thinking, well, yeah, but who've Crosby's line mates been? He's never been on a super line that I can think of. He's had some good wingers here and there, but in general, he's never really had two great wingers that he can pass to. And most great players in the NHL have had two great wingers on the wing at some point in time. And I'm trying to remember, and I'm not talking about good. I'm talking about like two really solid, excellent goal scoring wingers. They tend to kind of give him the projects where they're like, hey, Sid, we got this guy here. See what you can do with him. Really? Can I not? Could you guys can you? Never mind. So we'll see if Zohorna ends up playing with him. Anyways, I also wanted to talk about this, and it's something that, again, I think in the daily conversation we should have, which is that, yes, millionaire hockey players, they can stay at home. They're not completely out of shape. The idea that, well, they're going to be completely out of shape. They're working out as well as they can from home. Players are no longer like they were in the 80s. So for those people, maybe my age and older, we remember in the offseason, players would be out doing a whole bunch of stuff and not staying in shape and not working out. Players aren't really built that way anymore. And so while they're being told to kind of treat this like the offseason, because once we figure out a way to get games started again, odds are they won't have time off at all in between seasons and then into next season, which, based on some of the stuff that's out there, may not end up being 82 games. We just don't know right now. I decided to look just at the Carolina Hurricanes website and just count off how many people are listed on their website that work for the team in some regard, who are probably out of work right now. And it's approximately 200. And I wouldn't include, obviously, Tom Dundon. He's financially fine, and Rod Brindamore's probably financially okay, and Don Waddell and some of the higher-ups. But it's still approximately 200 people that work in scouting departments, marketing, ticketing, and various things just on their website. So you multiply that by 31 teams, that's about 6,000 people, 6,200 people right there, who would be directly affected by this league shutdown right now, the pause, who might be able to make some form of income if the league finds a way to salvage the season. And of course, then we get into next season as well, which doesn't touch the AHL teams that are being affected, where you have 31 teams as well. And then you get down to the ECHL, and then you get into minor hockey. So, in Canada here, minor hockey is huge. So is all minor hockey going to be shut down for a year? What does that do? Are we going to have a draft class at some point where you just don't have anybody of draft age who's necessarily 100% ready? Like, do you lose a whole year in your development as a kid of, say, 11, 12, 13 years of age, where these guys really start to develop, and you lose that whole year? Like, this is one of those conversations that everybody focuses on the millionaires and the billionaires, and I think that's fine, but that's the industry that feeds the rest. Yesterday, the NHL extended their agreement to minor development programs, and they do help fund the CHL and other various leagues around the world, because that's what feeds the NHL. So the idea that, well, what happens if the CHL goes under? It's in the NHL's best interest to make sure that the CHL doesn't go under. But that money has to come from somewhere. So the idea that if they come back and they start playing games, that's the most selfish, terrible thing you can do. The money generated from that goes elsewhere. The money generated from that might go to help some of these people who right now are completely out of work. And again, this is just on a website that I pulled 200 names approximately from the Carolina Hurricanes. And you've got to think, people in team stores aren't being listed. Your ice cleaners aren't being listed. Your anthem singers definitely not being listed. There's a lot of people being affected by this, that it's easy to just shrug your shoulders and go, it doesn't matter. But if they don't qualify for unemployment insurance, or if they do, then you're still paying. We're still paying for all this. And depending on which country you're in, it might be more difficult. Depending on which state or which province you're in, it might be more difficult. So there's a lot of moving parts here, and I think for the NHL to try to get things back and running, I don't think it's just this whole selfish, we've got to pay all the millionaires and billionaires thing. I think they're seeing like an organizational, from the top down, instability here, and we're seeing that all over. Plant that I used to work in, there was a positive test for COVID that was revealed today, and if I was still working there, I might very well have it myself. And that's, that's alarming. And yet they're not going to be closed down. They're not going to be closed down because they're an essential. Agricultural is essential. So, that's where we're at, and there's a lot of people out there right now who are definitely taking some risk, and I know there's going to be risks being, and again, I discussed this yesterday, so I'm gonna just say it here again today, and I'm gonna throw out there that I also posted a couple of links, both on my Twitter as well as in comments on yesterday's video. There are certain medicines that appear to be working on this that are in testing. So you have to test, that appear to be lessening the severity. So if we lessen the severity of what's going around, and if it's a drug that's readily available, then we can open things up sooner, because then if it's no longer the severity that's the problem, then you don't have to worry about overwhelming the medical system. And this is a treatment that could very well be publicly optional as of June. There's things that could come out as early as June. So one thing to think about is if the NHL came out and said, well, we're just going to cancel everything, and then in June something happens where you go, oh, actually they probably could have continued the season because now there's this medicine that's available that we can have, that they can treat people. Right, so there's reasons to hold off, and of course they're working with local medical officials. They're working with local governments. It's not like they can just walk in and go, "We're doing whatever we want." That's not how it works. So I like the even-handed approach that's being taken by the sports world. I think it's great, and once we get things up and running and things more of a normal variety, almost every night should be first responders and medical night, where if you're a doctor and a nurse, you're going through this right now, you get ticket discounts the same as veterans do, and you might even get preferential seating at certain games. I know Carolina this year, they had the one game where they had, and I'm just saying the one game because this was the one time I saw it. I know they probably do this other nights and likely other places, but where season ticket holders down front with the glass seats moved out of their seats and allowed veterans to sit there. As a way of thanking them for their service. So that kind of thing I think is going to be going on after this too, and I look forward to it. But between now and then, I will be here reporting hockey for you. Thank you guys so much for all your support, and remember, stay home if you can. Stay as safe as possible. Remember to keep your hands nice and clean. That all works. And thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.